Hi, I'm Sheldon Dingwall, and I'm here with Adam Nolly Getgood, and we're here to talk about Adam's new bass. It's the NG2, and Adam, over to you.
Sure. Well, I guess the story kind of starts about 2 years ago, on almost this exact day, 2 years ago at the London Bass Guitar Show. I came down from my hometown of Bath to check out specifically your basses, and I wanted to try the combustion model bass, which is the kind of entry-level bass, because I just wanted a really solid touring bass for my time with Periphery. And as soon as I tried it through the amp that you guys had there, I forget what it was, it was obvious that the low string just had a clarity beyond anything I'd heard on any other bass. And the character was just really punchy and aggressive, and I knew that that was the sound that I wanted to have on, live and on recording as well. So that was the start of it, and soon after that I began playing the combustion model live. And I guess people kind of took a fascination to the fan frets and could see the appeal of this design that you came up with all those years ago. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to explain anything about the concept behind the fan fret system that you use, or...
Sure, yeah. You know, and I've been talking less about fan frets lately, and more about it's just taking the classical style of building instruments that's used in pianos and harps and that entire family of instruments, where you have longer bass strings and shorter trebles, which evens everything out. And if you do it right, the bass string can sound like the lowest string sounds just as clear as the highest string, and everything balances out and it just makes life easier in all respects, playing, recording, and live. And then taking that technology and applying it to a standard guitar, violin family, and kind of having the best of both worlds. I mean, in the concert situation, classically, you have the biggest, longest piano you can find because it just speaks so clearly out in the concert hall. And we've been pushing this for years, and we've been with not a real specific use like you would use it. And then you've come along, and you're taking what we do and you're applying it in a new way that I don't think there is another bass out there that I'm aware of that can do it as well.
Yeah, certainly that was something that became obvious to me pretty quickly. Just so that people understand, I tune very low with my band Periphery, or rather the guitarists in my band tune very low, typically A flat, G, or even F sharp for the low string. And I like to keep the octave relationship going that bass guitar and guitar normally has. So in the past, a lot of bands that play as low as that, the bassist will step up to F sharp.
Yes.
And that was something which I wanted to get around. And even when you detune a regular bass that far, I find that the mid-range just gets completely different. Sorry, I'm a standard bass guitar. It doesn't have the same character, it doesn't have the same grind. I play with a lot of distortion in my tone. And unless the mid-range is sounding... unless the mid-range kind of collapses... When the mid-range kind of collapses, like it does with most basses, I find that put that through a distortion unit, it just turns into a kind of fuzzy, undefined sound. What I found with the combustions as soon as I started using them was I was able to retain this really tight grit while still hearing the fundamental tone of the string. And it still had that lovely kind of clank at the front end of the note, because I was able to use a relatively thin string for the tuning, or at least thinner than I would have been able to with the short scale. So yeah, I mean, fast forward a little bit, and I got to play one of the Canadian Afterburner models, which featured your triple pickup layout.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you want to explain maybe a bit about the concept behind having 3 pickups, yet with only 4 options.
Yeah, 3 pickups for us was just a natural progression. We like to, every day when I arrive at work, my mind is just buzzing with something that woke me up the night before of, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And oftentimes it winds up sucking. But the 3 pickups, it's almost become a signature for us, because it's allowed us to, we're not trying to invent the wheel, we're just trying to provide tones that have always been in music, in modern music, electric music, just provide an up-to-date version of them. So it's the same classical tones, but much more polished and much more powerful and much tighter for an audience whose perspective of entertainment has changed hugely since the 1950s. You know, an entertainment system is no longer a ball and a glove. It's, you know, it's something that's spectacular, and we're just trying to keep up with that and provide your audiences with a technology and with an instrument that can provide them an experience that competes, you know, in every way with a home theater system with an amazing sound system. And I kind of got off topic there.
That's fine, I'm sure.
It's something I'm passionate about. But yeah, the 3 pickup system has just allowed us to have sort of a very simple yet powerful access to tones that you normally wouldn't get with 2 pickups or with 1 pickup. And I think you found a tone in the 3 pickups that really worked well for you, and I'll hand it over to you to...
Sure. So one of the settings on the triple pickup layout is to have the bridge and the middle coil in series with one another. So you're getting double the output, or near enough. And it gives this huge kind of boost to the mid-range response, and just gives you this very fat, aggressive, punchy sound. And straight away on that bass, when I found that setting, I don't think it's ever left that setting. So soon after that, we began talking about the possibility of a combustion model bass that enables that setting. And basically we've ended up with what we have now, which is ostensibly a combustion model bass. So what I love about these things is that they're great workhorses. I've toured my older ones for over 2 years now. Well, no, coming up to 2 years. And they've been through every climate imaginable, often completely back-to-back, you know, from Philippines to Canada to, you know, anything you can imagine. And I've barely ever had to even tweak the truss rod or anything like that. They've just been rock solid the whole time. So this has all of those characteristics, but it also has the pickup layout. So by having just the 2 pickups, we didn't go for the 3, but the 2 pickups enables us to get that series tone that I really liked from the Afterburner model.
And visually, you can see that because the pickups are close together, you can visualize that they will have a focused, you know, very direct, very forceful tone. And because they're not located up towards the neck region, they're not going to be flubby sounding. You'd think they'd sound thin because they're close to the bridge, but it's not that way at all. They're focused and they're tight.
You'd also think there wouldn't be a lot of differentiation, because you can choose to only have the bridge or neck pickup, I say neck and middle pickup activated. Yet the tone difference is really quite distinct.
And I think it's more usual because it isn't as spread out. They're a little bit more close in relationship to each other. So with one amp setting, you're more likely to be able to use the bridge and the neck in a single EQ setting.
So that's 3 of the 4 positions that you can access. This is the pickup selector here. It's a 4-way rotary selector. The 4th is to have both pickups but in parallel. So that gives you a more traditional kind of tone where the 2 pickups are working against one another, and essentially you get a slightly notched mid-range, which works very well for slap players and I don't know, would you liken that to a kind of jazz bass almost sound?
A little more scoopy sounding. And we're talking about a rotary switch, which is probably not so familiar to most bass players. Most bass players would have a volume or a volume blend. One of the things I like about you is that because of what you're trying to achieve with your music, you're not bent on tradition. And that's one thing that we've never been bent on. We fought the rotary switch. We literally insisted that our customers try, and we still do. We get requests all the time, can you build it with a blend? And I said, why don't you just try the rotary first? Because all we care about is, does it work? And it really doesn't matter, does it work for us as builders? It doesn't matter. But we have so much feedback coming back from our customers saying, you know, this series setting is just, that's the one that now that I've heard it, that's the one I want. And you can't get that on a blend. You can only get that with a rotary switch or with a toggle switch. So we've become not stuck in our ways, but we've become more insistent that even though it's not traditional, it may not be familiar. We found that it works, and if it works, would like you to at least try it. And so we tend to be screw traditional. Let's just find something that does the job. And a lot of what we do looks like it's done for wow factor. I mean, this finish, the fan frets, they look like they're there maybe to grab attention. And the finish is, of course, yeah, it's to grab attention. But it also, to me, it drives an emotion inside of me that's exciting. I'm excited by that finish. The fan frets are there just strictly for tone reasons. They're not there. We did our best not to screw up the instrument by adding fan frets. It was just there to create an effect of tone and a better tone. Damn, I'm straying off topic again.
I'm sure that's fine. I mean, personally, I was going to say I've gotten so used to the look of fan frets now that basses with straight frets kind of look a little bit dumpy to me. This almost has a graceful movement to it that has become, you know, that's what I like in the look of the bass, and it also mirrors the shapes, the lines, and the shape of the bass. And
there is a flow in there that I'm sure is intentional, but I'm not a trained designer. It happened through sheer effort, but not really knowing what I was doing. It was just keeping going until I couldn't make it look any better. And then afterwards looking at it and going, oh, I see how these lines connect. I should mention that fan frets were invented by Ralph Novak, and we often get credited with it, but I can tell you in a million years, even if I would have thought of it, I wouldn't have had the confidence in myself as a builder to actually show anybody. I would have been afraid of being laughed at. But because I saw somebody else do it, I thought, oh, okay, well, that would work very well on bass.
Did he first do it on guitar or bass?
On guitar.
Because I'd say if there's one application, I think bass, at least a 5-string bass where you have a lower string, that's one of the best possible applications, the places where it makes most sense, I think, where you're really pushing the envelope of what a string can do, and of what amplification can do. And I think by giving it the extra help of the extended scale, which I should maybe mention is a 37-inch scale, so it's 3 inches longer than your standard 34, which is what the treble side of the instrument is, really helps with getting that low string across, which when you hear it is a beautiful sound. Yeah.
Oh man, the human ear can hear so much lower than 20 hertz. There's so much going on in low frequencies that are exciting, and I love how you're applying them. And I saw your show last month, and you know, I've been going to shows for longer than I'd care to admit. And you've got an excitement, and there's an energy, and I was watching the crowd, and everybody responded to it. There were lots of bands that night, but the response to you guys was overwhelmingly. You could see the excitement in the crowd more so than with the other bands. I won't mention who they were. But,
well, that's awesome. I mean, one regret that I'll never be able to rectify is that I could never go and experience what my own band sounds like live, because I have to be on stage all the time. But no, that's really awesome. And you know, within the genre of music that I play, bass plays a massive role, and a very underappreciated role. If the bass guitar sounds awesome, and an instrument like this has potential to sound, you know, block destroying, between the kind of mid-range grind you can get and just the pure low end, it's the most powerful instrument on stage pretty much. So
absolutely,
it's awesome to have a tool like this to be able to achieve that goal.
And what a lot of people probably don't realize is that you started on guitar,
right, and
are an accomplished guitar player.
I did a degree in guitar, so that was always my first instrument. I played that for 12 years before I even picked up a bass.
And you said something that I thought was really, really interesting. You talked about how your experience of playing bass live, how you were actually starting to prefer it. Did I get that right?
I mean, just on a personal level, guitar is quite a fiddly little instrument to play. I mean, nothing compared to, say, a mandolin or something, but when you move to playing a bass, it's so much more visceral somehow. You have a lot more room for error, and that's a good thing. You can really throw the instrument around. You can get a really solid hold on what you're doing. You also, for the most part, don't have to worry about playing chords or bending or anything like that. And it's just so much fun when you can feel the amount of energy that you're producing on stage. feel the rumble, feel the stage moving, and feel the air moving behind you. I prefer it at this point for sure.
Yeah, I'm a guitar player as well, and that's something that I never had a chance to experience live. And now that you've talked about that experience, I've gone and jammed on bass, and it is it's a feel thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I get back to that exciting feeling, and just bass is so much more exciting feeling than guitar. Guitar is much more, for me, about technique. Bass is much more about energy and movement and locking in with the drummer, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, guitar has its place too, but bass is certainly very underappreciated. And one thing that's great as well is our front of house guy Alex, who's very talented, he tells me every night that the bass is what saves the mix. At a venue, he mixes me really loud. I know that I can be heard out front. I think that's the worst thing when you're a bass player, is feeling the energy you're producing and knowing that it's not getting out front, that people aren't hearing it, they aren't feeling it. And certainly this bass, the character of this bass and of the other Dingwall basses I've played is so strong that it's cutting through. You can see people reacting to it.
Yeah, that's to me, again, I hate to keep using the word exciting, but it is exciting, because I've seen so many shows where you see fingers moving on the bass player and you hear bass, but you don't actually hear what the guy's playing.
You hear a sine wave.
Exactly,
beneath everything else, yeah.
And it's frustrating, because some of these guys, you went to see the bass player. I again, won't mention names, but the whole point of going to the show was to see the bass player, and then stand there and not be able to hear what he was doing.
Yeah.
I know everybody's going to ask. I thought the same thing. When I saw Fan Frets, I thought, there's no way I can play it. What was your experience when you first picked it up?
I mean, I had played Fan Fret guitars before. I played a Fan Fret 8-string. I borrowed that for a number of months. It was actually made by Doug Campbell, who makes Black Machine guitars here in London.
Ah, yeah.
Which are really fantastic instruments.
Really cool, yeah.
Yeah, very cool instruments. So I had come across them before, but I think where there might be certain problems on guitars, chording can be an issue. It can also become easier. The Fan Frets can actually reduce the amount of stretch that you have to make.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you play a chord that goes the opposite way, it can become more of a stretch, which is a problem. Bass, I feel like you have a lot less of those problems. And honestly, I think the thing that everyone has found whenever I've let them play my bass or anything is always that it's so much less of an issue than they think it's going to be. Especially if you don't look at where you're putting your fingers. Then it just happens naturally. You very rarely hit a wrong note.
When I first tried one out, I closed my eyes purposely to see if I could screw up by not looking at it. And that's what sold me on it, was the fact that with my eyes closed, my fingers just found their place. I still don't understand why it works, but it does.
I don't know if it's the reason, but I certainly like to point out to people that the frets, if you look at any two frets, they are very close to being parallel to one another.
Yeah.
It's only when you take in the whole range of the guitar from nut to bridge, way off the playing end, that it starts to look as severe as it does.
And by design, most of the stretch has been pushed into the bridge side of things.
Right. So I mean, I don't know, is it somewhere between the 7th to 8th fret, the parallel?
It used to be the 7th exactly, and then as we evolved things, it drifted a little bit. So there is no perpendicular fret, but it's right around the 7th, 8th fret.
I think the only thing that can trip you up is if you're used to moving your elbow a huge amount to move your arm up and down. That's essentially to keep your fingers parallel to a parallel fret board. If you allow your elbow to stay in position more or less, you'll find that your hands naturally kind of angle themselves as you move around. I mean, I've never even had to rely on that though, but I think if someone really had a problem, they could just focus on that and probably find it wasn't an issue.
People are adaptable, more adaptable than they think. And I always look at it, if you've got an adventurous spirit, man, this is an adventure. You've got a whole world that you can open up. And anybody that's interested in playing at the level you're at have probably invested a decade or longer in their technique. And to me, just to be able to open up a brand new world of exploration and possibility is why would you not want to do that?
I'd say the only physical challenge is dealing with the 37-inch scale, which for almost anything you do isn't much of an issue. There's one song which we don't play very frequently where I do have to stretch from the first to the fifth fret on the E string, but I've gotten around it. For one stretch in the set, it's worth it for the sound. You can just do a quick shift. You have to position shift rather than being able to take it in one static stretch. But
Gotcha.
yeah, as I say, I think the trade-off is more than worth that one hurdle. And certainly, by being quite a narrow nut on this instrument, that really enables the stretch. And it's a thin neck, almost guitar-like. I think actually guitar-like, not even almost, with a very low action. That was something that drew me to it straight away, and must come, I think, from your background in guitar playing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't try to, but any luthier, when they carve a neck, they're going to carve something that feels good to themselves. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in an era when necks were sleek, and not sleek in a knife edge kind of way, but just sleek there's just enough wood there to support your hand, and no more, no less. And
I've certainly never heard anyone complain about it being too thin. Put it that way.
No.
But it is a very playable neck, and we did tweak it slightly for this model from the regular combustion.
Yeah, and that was sort of the final piece in the puzzle. We've had the combustion model, which this is based off, for several years now, and one of the criticisms of that model was that the neck was larger feeling, and just through constantly thinking about it, why is that? The dimensions are the same. Why does it feel bigger?
That blew my mind when I found out it was the same actual neck profile as on the Canadian instruments. Yeah, it felt completely different.
And it's funny, all it took was just re-radiusing the fingerboard, making it a bit of a tighter radius, and everything fell into place. It radically changed the feel of the neck. And
so just to explain, that the center point of the neck is still the same thickness as it always was, but
identical.
The fretboard now tapers more towards the edge, so it has the feel of being slimmer.
Yeah, and in piano, I never forgot the teacher telling me to learn like you're holding an orange, and keep your fingers curved. For whatever reason, ergonomically, it's better for your fingers, according to my piano teacher, and I never forgot that. And so with the bass, because you're stretching your hand out, we've always tried to have as round a shape at the nut as possible. And that's one of those things I can't prove, and I don't even know if I'm actually on the right track or not. I do know that it does feel more comfortable, and it certainly affects the neck in a very positive way, having a tighter radius on the fingerboard.
And the Canadian models flatten out. They have a compound radius, if I'm correct.
Yes, they go from quite a traditional 7.5-inch radius at the nut, and flatten out to almost a 25-inch radius at the bridge, which sounds insane, but we worked it out with a computer, and that's what it takes to do it properly.
So what is the radius on this? Because this doesn't have a compound radius. It's a
single radius, and it's a 240 millimeter, which is roughly 9 inches.
Okay, yeah. On guitar, I think the one problem you run into with heavily radiused fretboards is bending can become an issue, but it's not really a problem with bass. And I've certainly never played this and felt like that was anything other than a perfectly normal fretboard.
That was my worry, and the other worry was because the bass, the window that the pickups are trying to sense. If you have too much radius, like on an older Fender style instrument, like a jazz with a flat top pickup and quite a heavily radiused string arc, you wind up with the outside strings being too loud and the inside strings being not loud enough. But we were able to work around that, and it actually everything fell into place, that we've got a nice even output, even though we've increased the string arc.
So construction-wise, we kept it pretty similar to the regular combustion, because that just sounded awesome. It has a wicked acoustic spank to it, which... These aren't even brand new strings, but you can hear the instrument's just super loud and punchy.
Loud and lively. as a builder, I can see the architecture that other builders have grown up in, and it's affected me as well. And I come from an area where it's really salt of the earth type of people, where it's prairie, the climate is harsh, and so the people that came before me, the ancestors of the area that I'm from, their tools needed to be reliable, and so that was just ingrown in my psyche. And so our truss rod system, these bases are manufactured in China, but they're made from components. We ship truss rods over to the factory for them to install in the necks. The necks are a laminate of maple versus just a one-piece maple, which would be far easier, far cheaper to build, and it would be far cheaper to just put in any old truss rod. But this is something that we're very passionate about, is that, as you mentioned before, you've gone from climate to climate to climate around the world, and your instrument has been consistent through weather changes, through temperature changes. And that's by design. That's not by accident. That's by design. And then the body itself is made from alder, which is a traditional instrument wood. It's something that we're all familiar with. So it's maple, it's alder, but everything in it has been thought out to the nth degree to create an instrument that's a tool that's stable, it's reliable, that is going to work day in and day out. And I like to say, nothing ever breaks on, a weekday when you're across the street from the store. It always breaks, on a Saturday night when you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got no possibility of salvaging your instrument. So it's been designed and built with an eye towards reliability, more so than I think you'd notice right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, referring to an instrument as a tool doesn't sound like a very glamorous term, but honestly, as a working musician, that's one of the highest praises I could give the instrument. Is just day in, day out. It's absolutely the way I want it to be. It stays, the setup stays perfect. The basses hold up really well. If you see my touring basses, they've been bashed around plenty on stage and off stage, and they still work 100%. So I really think that I know already that these basses are going to be fantastic working tools for musicians out there.
Yeah, your job is to communicate your emotions to your audience, and so the more this can disappear, and you don't have to think about your instrument, the better job you're going to have of communicating. And so my job is to make the bass invisible and just disappear. And
so we painted it bright green.
So we painted it bright green.
Because one of the other components that goes into the bass that you don't find in the regular combustion is the preamp that we're designing with Dark Glass Electronics, who make the very popular B7K distortion pedal preamp rather that I use.
Yes, big part of your sound.
Big part of my sound indeed, and lovely people, and I wanted nothing more than to develop something with them that could become part of the bass. So I reached out to them about designing an EQ preamp for the bass, and we're still just tweaking it a tiny bit. But the main goal for me was, beyond your usual kind of treble and bass bands, was to find just the right area of the mid-range that I could boost to bring out that real growliness in the bass that isn't going to make it muddy. And it took only 2 revisions. The first one, by my request, I think I placed a little bit too high in the frequency spectrum, and Spencer from Dark Glass, who handles the US production, came out to one of my shows, and we tweaked it together until we were happy. And it didn't take much, but I think we found just the right spot where when I just roll that up a touch, or a lot, depending on how I feel, it just brings out that lovely grind that works very well with the distorted tone that I use. So very happy with that. We're still tweaking the treble band a touch, because we've got a couple of cool ideas that might be good.
Which we're probably not going to mention just right now.
No, we'll keep that under wraps.
Yeah, but it is... I'm super excited about working with the Dark Glass guys, because they're young, they've got great vision, they're located on 3 different continents, and you out of England and me out of Canada. It's really like a worldwide effort. But these guys are just so in tune with with bass and bass distortion, and yet Spencer plays old school funk, and he's really good at it.
Yeah.
And Doug's a fantastic designer. And when we all sat down at last month for breakfast and we started pounding out ideas, there was just this instant rapport and synergy between you and them and myself, and it just everything flowed. And within minutes, we were cooking up ideas that would have taken forever to try and do via email. And in some cases, like when things aren't flowing and things aren't gelling, they just never happen. But with you and Dark Glass and myself, it was just like, bang, we're all on the same page instantly. And it blows me away because I'm quite a bit older and I'm from a completely different background as you and them, and yet it all just sort of fell together. It's like this musical language of bass is worldwide, and we were all speaking the same language just right out of the gate.
I mean, you talk about yourself being older, but the thing that blows me away is that you came up with these designs over a decade ago. Or...
Oh yeah, we were experimenting with F-sharp tuning at least 10 years ago, but there was no market for it, and
it's finally catching up now. So
yeah,
it's pretty awesome. I guess the only thing we haven't really spoken about aesthetically is the pickguard design, which was a bit of a happy accident, really, in the end with the racing strikes.
Another thing that we share in common is a passion for cars, and again, you've had a lot of input into this bass, and it's all been, it's all just been, and every idea you've thrown at me is like, yeah, I love it. And one of the things you wanted to bring was automotive influence, and in the 50s, that I thought that was the most exciting thing about the Strats and Tellys of the 50s was when they walked down the street to the automotive store and got custom car colors. And Southern California is just this wonderful melting pot of racing and motorcycles and hot rods and guitars, and I think that's why the electric guitar is as exciting and sexy and has been for so many years, is because of all that cross-pollination of those different cultures. And that's something that you brought to this. And with the pickguard, you came in wanting carbon fiber to reflect sort of the tuner influence. And I've been really into Mustangs lately, and I've always loved the distinctive look of the Ferrari Testarossa with the strakes along the side. Say what you like about the car, when you think Testarossa, that's what comes to mind.
Course, yeah.
And so trying to put that into a pickguard, you watch all these shows where they do these theme, either hot rods or theme motorcycles, and they can tend to look cheesy if you try too hard. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of I was a little bit concerned when you said you wanted to bring in automotive influence. I'm going, God, how am I going to do this? And we just sort of worked back and forth and threw those ideas out there. And I think we get the idea across without pounding people over the head with, we're trying to get an automotive hot rod feel.
I mean, I wasn't sure about the carbon fiber. There's definitely an idea. I think both of us were slightly worried that it might end up looking a little bit cheesy. But somehow, I don't think it does. And the response from everyone that's seen it has been awesome.
It's been 100%.
Everyone seems to be into it. So.
And my concern, and we went with carbon print instead of carbon fiber for a couple of reasons. One was carbon fiber itself is I've worked with it before. We'll continue to work with it. But machining it, I think, is quite dangerous for people's health. And I didn't want to see that become a factor. But also with the strakes that cut through it, people are going to be rubbing their knuckles on that. And I've had carbon fiber slivers before, and they're one of the worst things. They just never go away. They don't fester and pop out. They just stay in your body forever.
Yeah.
So we went with a print, and I really like the look. I like the fact that this is something I've never seen before, and I like the fact that I think this is going to be an instrument that years from now people look back at, and it's a classic instrument.
I hope so. I mean, that would be beyond my expectations for sure, but it would be amazing.
And you know, we won't know until years from now. But I think of anything that we've done, this has the greatest chance of being a future classic.